As you can plainly see, our next presenter is Professor Ralph Noble. He's an associate professor in the Department of Cognitive Science. Also is the director of first-year studies program at Rensselaer. And is that no longer true?
No.
Is that ever true?
Well, I don't think so. But, you know, at some point you forget.
Thank you.
The one thing I've never done in my 48 years in this business is a 5-minute talk. So, can I assume that when we get the dreadful blue light, I'm done? Is that 5 minutes? The only good reason I can think of for agreeing to do this is to actually give a 5-minute talk for a change. Okay. So if I press
So go ahead and press right.
Now,
Put your slide up.
what
Hit space bar once.
what button do I press for that?
That's just anything.
That's good.
That's your.
Okay, I can do it there, okay. Now, in order to unlearn, I think there's two things that I see as being part of it. You know, the slogan is unlearn all of your expectations, but not your intentions. Now, I think Miss Parade said it the best when she said, figure out how you want things to come out, something like that. I was struggling with words like mission, quest, vision, agenda, but I think you said it much better than I did, and now I'm going to reinforce what Professor Handler had to say. Forget your expectations. You come to graduate school with a lot of expectations, and that's really important that you put them in a certain perspective, and I thought I'd take advantage of my mature years to shock the hell out of you. But don't forget how you want things to turn out, because that's the one thing in your career that's not going to change. Whether you want to think of it as just the way you want things to turn out, or your mission, everybody has something, a question, I think of it as a question that they want answered. The people who do well in the long run in this business figure out what that question is and answer it. Otherwise, you run the risk of getting caught up in what is fashionable. And some people succeed at that, but most of them aren't very happy. So I started in this business. I cashed my first academic paycheck when I was 18, just barely 18. And as an undergraduate in what turned out to be a very famous lab, I just thought it was a normal lab, I had very clear expectations in 1960s. Okay? 100% of all grant applications that were approved were funded at 100%. That doesn't happen anymore. We won't mention the numbers. Search committees called your advisor and said, do you have anybody for me this year? People wrote grants to do what they wanted to do. No RFPs, at least not in any self-respecting institution. And none of this, people who can't get tenure-track jobs going to Washington and making policy decisions. And famous people showed up every week, every Wednesday, and presented talks. And some of them went on to get Nobel Prizes for the study of behavior. So that's what I thought was normal. And we would discuss deep philosophical and theoretical issues in the lab. Then I went to California, and the first discussion was, I don't think he used enough rats in that study. So I don't recommend California for that reason, right? Now, plus, you know, now the point here is not that I'm old. The point is that reality changes very quickly. By the time I entered the job market in 1970, and yes, I really didn't like California, search committees stopped calling. You know, within a period of months, it went from people calling your advisor to nobody answering your phone calls. Massive cutbacks in funding hit about 1970. So it went from one world to another. And to give you an idea of how strange it is, 1972, 1973, a whole bunch of money that President Nixon had pulled out of funding, they decided to give it back. So in one brief spurt, everybody who had ever submitted a proposal that got funded at any level got an email saying, no, they didn't get emails. We didn't have emails. We didn't have emails, we didn't have computers, but you know, that's not important. Right? In 1969, everybody in Berkeley who finished the psychology program in 1969, you know, a bad job would have been Colorado State and Fort Collins, which is now apparently a wonderful place to live. And everybody got jobs at that level. Those of us who were coming out in 70, 71, 72, of the 25 people I started with, only 3 ended up getting academic jobs at all. Things haven't changed quite that rapidly since. But that there is a real point that if you expect the reality you're in now to be one that you can guide your choices, in a career frame, that's not realistic. But if you come back to making things come out the way you want them to, that doesn't change. I mean, I've studied everything from parental behavior in ring doves to social behavior in primates and human beings. And I've gone back to my roots. And, you know, instead of studying birds, now I study the behavior of bureaucrats, which is... and how we can use the internet to replace them. Unfortunately, it looks like that maybe how the internet can give me more power, but I'm hopeful. So things change very quickly. And to summarize, perhaps in under 4 to 5 minutes, I've had at least 3 careers. I think I skipped one. At one point, I must have been a psychologist. I started really, people. Okay. Started out as a comparative psychologist, became a behavioral endocrinologist. Both of those disciplines are essentially disappeared. Comparative psychology morphed into human ethology, organized by a bunch of very, very bright developmental psychologists, all of whom created a wonderful discipline in a very short period of time, none of whom got tenure. And then it was revisited by the British and German ethologists who tried to create it without another human ethology, without any understanding of human behavior. That didn't work too well. And is coming back as evolutionary psychologist. So that might be my next career, treating bureaucrats as a species someplace between birds and hamsters. So I want to come back and support what Professor Hendry was really saying, and I think what was embedded, I was hoping you were going to talk about chimps. I was so disappointed. It was a pretty picture, okay? Okay, figure out what you really want to do. That's the only thing that's going to provide any stability to your career, and not what you expect in terms of career advancement or anything else, because that ain't going to work, in addition to being ideologically unpleasant, okay? Almost made it.